Darth Vader, the Dark Lord of the Sith, a figure of terror across the galaxy. But what was it truly like to become him? To go from the promising Jedi Knight, Anakin Skywalker, to the mechanical enforcer of the Empire. Before he was Darth Vader, he was Anakin Skywalker. A man with hopes, dreams, friendships, and a deep love for his wife, Padme Amidala. He was a hero of the Clone Wars, a Jedi Knight who once believed he could bring peace to the galaxy. He had children on the way. He had a future, but all of it was stripped away, consumed by his own fears, twisted by Palpatine's manipulation, and sealed by a series of fateful mistakes. It is easy to overlook just how horrific it would have been for Anakin to experience becoming Darth Vader. The physical torment, the psychological suffering, the loss of everything he had once held dear. He was not simply transformed into a Sith Lord. He was broken, reforged, and imprisoned within a body that was no longer his own. In this video, we will explore the first few years of Darth Vader's life in the suit, the torment of his new existence, his psychological struggles, and his eventual full transformation into the Emperor's enforcer. After his devastating duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker was left to die on the volcanic planet of Mustafar. His body was broken, his limbs severed from his body, his skin scorched by the intense heat. His flesh burned away as he lay helpless on the ashen ground, the pain unbearable beyond words. He could feel his body shutting down, his strength leaving him, his breath becoming shallow. Yet even as the darkness threatened to claim him, hatred burned inside of him. Hatred for Obi-Wan, for the Jedi, for himself. But death did not come to him. Instead, Darth Sidious arrived and transported him back to Coruscant for reconstruction. The process of rebuilding him was excruciating. Advanced medical droids replaced his missing limbs with cybernetics. His burned lungs were encased in a life support system. The black armor, designed as both protection and a prison, was sealed onto him. Every nerve in his body screamed in agony as the final components were put into place. When he awoke, Anakin was no more. In his place stood Darth Vader. The first moments in his new form were filled with agony. The suit, though life-saving, was not designed for comfort. According to Star Wars lore, Palpatine intentionally designed Darth Vader's suit to be uncomfortable and cause pain, as a way to keep Vader dependent on the dark side by constantly feeding off his anger and suffering from the suit's discomfort, essentially using the pain as a tool to control him. The neural connections between his cybernetic limbs and his nervous system sent searing pain through his body. The transition was brutal, every movement a reminder of his injuries. His arms and legs no longer felt like his own. The once fluid motion he had mastered as a Jedi was now sluggish and awkward. His fingers twitched unnaturally, their sensitivity dulled by crude engineering. The weight of the suit pressed down on him, making each step a struggle. The artificial breathing system restricted his ability to control his own respiration, forcing him into an unnatural rhythm. He would never again breathe freely. He would never again feel the wind on his skin, nor the warmth of a sun's rays. His human body was gone. He could no longer feel touch, nor experience the world as he once did. The darkness of his helmet was absolute. His vision filtered through the glowing red display inside. Every movement required calculation. Every action reminded him of what he had lost. His body now required constant upkeep. The suit could not be removed for long periods, its mechanics needing routine maintenance to function properly. Every aspect of his life was now controlled by technology. The transition was unbearable, but the pain did not stop with his body. It extended to his very soul. Vader's suffering was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and deeply psychological. He had sacrificed everything. His friends, the Jedi Order, his very identity, to save Padme. And yet, she was dead. The weight of her death, of his own choices, crushed him. But Palpatine encouraged him to suppress it, fueling his hatred instead. The galaxy no longer saw Anakin Skywalker. They only saw a Sith Lord. He had no one to confide in, no one to comfort him. The Emperor constantly reminded him of his failures, keeping him in a state of submission. Any hope Vader had of autonomy was crushed under his master's thumb. Even speaking his former name was forbidden. His past was dead. Only Vader remained. He became trapped not just in a suit, but in a cycle of hatred and self-loathing. The isolation was suffocating. He was surrounded by officers and troopers who feared him, but no one who truly knew him. There was no camaraderie, no companionship, no warmth. His only company was his own torment. Each night, in the solitude of his meditation chamber, he would relive Mustafar. The heat, the pain, the betrayal. He would hear Padmé's voice, soft and pleading, before it faded into nothingness. There was no escape, only the endless torment of knowing that he had done this to himself.
It seems in your anger, you killed her.
Palpatine wasted no time in putting Vader to work. His first years were spent hunting and eliminating the last remnants of the Jedi Order. Vader led missions across the galaxy, tracking down survivors of Order 66. Many of them had been his former comrades. There was no mercy. He oversaw the training of the Inquisitors, fallen Jedi turned into hunters of their own kind. He personally crushed early resistance groups, ensuring that no opposition to the Empire could rise. His fighting style had to change. No longer able to rely on speed, he became a force of brute strength, overwhelming opponents with raw power. These years solidified Vader as a figure of terror. He was no longer Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight. He was the Emperor's executioner. As the years passed, Vader fully embraced his new identity. He no longer questioned his place.
Anakin's gone. He's gone. Anakin's gone. I am what remains.
The pain, the suffering, it all became fuel for his power. He believed that Anakin Skywalker was truly dead. His thoughts of rebellion against Palpatine faded. He became the enforcer of the Sith, the face of the Empire. His emotions were dulled, his mind focused only on the will of his master. And so Darth Vader, once a man, became something else entirely. A legend, a nightmare, a machine of destruction. For over 20 years, Vader served the Emperor without question. But then a young rebel pilot emerged, Luke Skywalker, his son. Luke was unlike anyone Vader had faced before. He did not fight with hate. He did not seek vengeance. He believed there was still good in his father. For the first time in decades, something within Vader stirred. Watching his son suffer at the hands of the Emperor, he realized the truth. Palpatine had never been his ally. He had been his master, his jailer, and in that moment, the choice was clear. With the last of his strength, Vader destroyed the Emperor. The Sith were ended. But the battle had taken its toll. Vader was dying. For the first time in over 20 years, Anakin Skywalker saw the world through his own eyes. Not as a Sith, not as a machine, but as a father, as himself. And in his final moments, he was at peace. Darth Vader is not just one of the most iconic villains of all time. He is one of the most iconic and memorable characters in all of fiction. His image, his voice, and his presence have transcended Star Wars to become part of popular culture. But what makes him truly timeless is not just the fear he instills, but the depth of his story. The tragedy, the loss, and ultimately, the redemption. The tale of Darth Vader is one of family, of love, of power, and of downfall. It is a story of a man striving to be the best he can be, to fight for what is good and right, to protect those he loves. But it is also a story of how fear, anger, and misplaced trust can lead to ruin. Vader's journey is one of catastrophic failure, where good intentions give way to darkness, and where the weight of one's choices can lead to devastating consequences. And yet, Star Wars is not a story of despair. It is a story of hope. Despite all of his mistakes, despite all the suffering he inflicted upon the galaxy and himself, in the end, Vader found redemption. Through his son, through an act of selfless love, he shattered the chains that had bound him for so long. He was no longer the monster he had become. He was Anakin Skywalker once more. Star Wars, in many respects, is Anakin's story. The story of a hero, a villain, and ultimately a father who, in his final moments, chose love over hate. That is why his legacy endures. That is why he remains one of the most powerful and compelling characters in cinematic history. His story is a reminder that no matter how far someone falls, there is always a path back to the light. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and check out some of our other Star Wars videos that you can find here on the bottom of your screen.